Now, you might ask me, what do you mean by revival? There is a world of difference between a crusade or a special effort in the field of evangelism. My dear people, that is not revival. But is it not true that such movements do not, as a general rule, touch the community? The community remains more or less the same, and the masses go past us to hell. But in revival, the community suddenly becomes conscious of the movings of God beginning among His own people. So that in a matter of hours, not days, in a matter of hours, churches become crowded. No intimation of any special meeting, but something happening that moves men and women to the house of God. And you find within hours scores of men and women crying to God for mercy before they went near a church. When God stepped down, suddenly men and women all over the parish were gripped by the fear of God. They would say again and again, God, you're a covenant-keeping God, and you must be true to your covenant engagement. The praying and the meetings continued for several months, until one night a very remarkable thing happened. They're kneeling among straw in the barn of a farmhouse, when suddenly one young man rose and read part of Psalm 24. Who shall ascend the hill of God? Who shall stand in His holy place? He that has clean hands and a pure heart, who has not lifted up his soul to vanity, nor sworn deceitfully, he shall receive the blessing of the Lord. And he shut his Bible, and then looking down at the minister and at the other men who were kneeling there, he said this, rather crude words, not so crude in Gaelic, but this is what he said. Brethren, it seems to me just so much handout to be praying as we are praying, to be waiting as we are waiting, if we ourselves are not rightly related to God. Oh, my dear brethren, let's take that to heart. He began to pray, God, are my hands clean? Is my heart pure? And that dear man got no further. He fell on his knees, and then on his face among the straw, and within a matter of minutes, 3 of the elders fell into a trance. The moment that happened in the barn, a power was let loose in Barnabas that shook the whole of Louis. I say shook Louis. God stepped down. the Holy Spirit began to move among the people. And the minister, writing about what happened on the following morning, said this: "You met God on meadow and moorland. You met Him in the homes of the people. God seemed to be everywhere." What was that? Revival. Revival. Not an evangelist, not a special effort, not anything at all organized on the basis of human endeavor, but an awareness of God that gripped the whole community, so much so that work stopped. What was happening? The people were meeting in groups. Young men would gather in a field and begin to talk about this strange consciousness of God that had gripped the community. I went to the church. Now this is the interesting bit, because it deals with the outbreak of God in supernatural power. The God of miracle revealing Himself in revival. I preached in the church to a congregation of about 300, and I would say a good meeting, a wonderful sense of God, something that I hadn't known since the 1921 movement in Middlegyle. But nothing really happened. And I pronounced the benediction. And I'm walking down the aisle when this young man came to me and said, "Nothing has broken out tonight, but God is hovering over us. He's hovering over us midday. And He'll break through any moment." Well, I must be perfectly honest, I didn't feel anything. But you see, here was a man much nearer to God than I was. Oh, he knew the secret. We're moving down the aisle and the congregation is moving out. They're all out now except this man and myself. He lifted his two hands and started to pray. "God, you made a promise to pour water on the thirsty and floods upon the dry ground, and you're not doing it." And he prayed, and prayed again until he fell again onto the floor in a trance. He's lying there. I'm standing beside him for about 5 minutes. And then the door of the church opened, and the session clerk came in. "Mr. Campbell, something wonderful has happened. Revival has broken out. Will you come to the door and see the crowd that's here?" 11 o'clock, Matthew, 11 o'clock. And I went to the door, and there must have been a congregation of between 600 and 700 people gathered round the church. This dear man stood at the door and suggested that we might sing a psalm. He gave out Psalm 102, "When Zion's bondage God turned back, as men that dreamed were we. Then filled with laughter was our mouth, our tongue with melody." And they sang, and they sang, and they sang. And in the midst of it I could hear the cry of the penitent. I could hear men crying to God for mercy. And I turned to the elder and said, I think we had better open the doors again and let them in. And within a matter of minutes, the church was crowded at 11:45. Now, where did the people come from? How did they know that a meeting was in progress in the church? Well, I cannot tell you. But I know this, that from village and hamlet, the people came. Were you to ask some of them today, what was it that moved you? They couldn't tell you. Only that they were moved by a power that they could not explain, and the power was such as to give them to understand and see that they were hell-deserving sinners. And of course, the only place they could think of where they might find help was at the church. And here they were, between 600 and 700. There was a dance in progress that night in the parish, and while this young man was praying in the aisle, the power of God moved into that dance. And the young people, over 100 of them, fled from the dance as though fleeing from a plague. And they made for the church. When I endeavored to get up into the pulpit, I found the way blocked with young people who had been at the dance. When I went into the pulpit, I found a young woman, a graduate of Aberdeen University, who was at the dance. And she's lying on the floor of the pulpit crying, "Is there mercy for me? Is there mercy for me? Is there mercy for me?" God was at work, and Peggy's vision, now actual and real, a church crowded with young people as well as old. Well, that meeting continued until 4 o'clock in the morning. Sense of God, the fear of God in the parish and in the neighboring parish. You could speak to any person and you would find them thinking about God and crying for mercy. Now that is a fact that cannot be disputed. God was everywhere. And because of this awareness of God, the churches were crowded. Crowded. Through the day, right on through the night till 5 and 6 o'clock in the morning. In revival, time does not exist. You see, the presence of God program. How often I've cried to God to so move in our midst that the program will go and the presence take the place. Well, that was what happened.